my boss fired me to give his nephew my job, so I made sure he lost his company, his house, and his freedom. Let me start by saying I'm not usually a vengeful person. I've always believed in taking the high road, letting karma do its thing. But sometimes, karma just takes too long. And in my case, by the time it did kick in, I was the one driving the damn car. This happened a few years ago, but the satisfaction still warms my soul like a hot cup of coffee on a winter morning. I worked for a mid-sized construction and engineering company, let's call it Greyrock Solutions. I was a senior project manager, had been there for over 7 years, and had built a reputation for being reliable, thorough, and fast. I wasn't flashy, I didn't brown nose, but my work spoke for itself. I oversaw large-scale commercial renovation projects, hospitals, university buildings, occasionally some high-end residential properties. It was stressful, technical work with long hours and tight deadlines. But I liked it. I was good at it. And for the most part, I was respected, at least until he showed up. His name was Travis, and he was the 26-year-old nephew of the company's CEO, Ron. Travis had just graduated from a for-profit business school, the kind of place that hands out degrees like coupons. I don't think he'd ever been on an actual job site in his life. Ron brought him in as a junior executive, which was a made-up title that basically meant, hang out in the office and pretend to be important. The guy had no technical knowledge, no real-world experience, and a laugh that made you want to punch drywall. But worst of all, he had opinions. About everything. He'd barge into project meetings with half-baked ideas, interrupt engineers to tell them they were overcomplicating it, and make weird, cringy jokes about millennial laziness while sipping a $7 protein shake. I did my best to avoid him, but it became obvious fast that he was being groomed for something. He started shadowing me, not to learn, but to criticize. He'd stand behind me while I was reviewing blueprints and say things like, "Huh, looks complicated." I would have just done a prefab solution. Saves time, bro. Then came the real kick in the teeth. I was called into a meeting with Ron and HR one Friday morning. The whole vibe was off. HR rep looked uncomfortable. Ron had his "this is going to hurt you more than me" face on. Ron starts with, "You've been a great asset, but the company is going in a new direction." I asked, "What does that mean?" He said they were restructuring upper management and my position was being phased out. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Because I already knew what this was. Travis had been sniffing around my projects for weeks, asking for copies of my reports, taking notes, asking dumb questions that I politely answered. He was absorbing my job like a parasite, so I asked, just to confirm, is Travis going to be taking over my projects? Ron's silence told me everything I needed. HR cut me a check for a modest severance package and asked me to leave that day. No 2 weeks. No goodbye to my team. Just thanks for your service, now please get out. But here's where they messed up and where I started planning. In their rush to screw me over, they forgot that I was the only one with access to a specific piece of internal software, a custom-built project tracking database I had designed from scratch about 5 years earlier. It wasn't just a spreadsheet or some off-the-shelf app. It was a complex, layered system built in SQL with a visual front-end. Think of it as a living, breathing blueprint repository, scheduling tool, and budgeting system all in one. Every project, every permit scan, every supplier contract, everything went through that system, and only I knew how it worked. Sure, other people used it, but I built it, I maintained it, and I was the one who trained everyone. No one else knew how to fix it, update it, or even access the backend without my credentials, and they never made me sign over ownership. Not in the employee agreement. Not in any contract. It was my intellectual property, so I smiled, thanked them for the severance, packed up my things, and left the system running. But I knew what was coming. 2 weeks later, I started getting texts from my former coworkers. Apparently, Travis was now overseeing 3 major projects and couldn't figure out how to track progress or update plans. He'd been trying to recreate the tracking system in Excel and was using it wrong, like, massively wrong. Subcontractors weren't getting paid. Permits were missing deadlines. Material deliveries were going to the wrong sites. The entire workflow had basically ground to a halt. I ignored it. Then Ron emailed me. Politely, at first. "Hey, just wondering if you could help us with a couple questions about the old system?" I ignored that too. Then he called. Left a voicemail practically begging me to come in for just a day or two to consult, paid, of course. I responded with a formal email stating that since I no longer worked for Greyrock, and since I had never signed over the software or documentation, I was under no obligation to assist. I also added that if they attempted to reverse engineer or replicate the system without permission, I would pursue legal action. Then I trademarked the software. That same week, I was contacted by a competing firm, let's call them TitanBuild. Word had gotten around the industry that I was back on the market. They offered me a job. A better one. More pay, better hours, full creative control over systems development. I took it. Meanwhile, Greyrock began bleeding money. Projects went over budget by hundreds of thousands. Clients started pulling out. One university terminated their contract mid-renovation and sued for breach, claiming gross incompetence. Their legal filing even referenced missed inspections and code violations, all things that wouldn't have happened if they'd followed the system I'd built. Then came the audits. Turns out Travis had been signing off on expense reports he didn't understand. He'd authorized inflated invoices, double-paid vendors, and approved permit fees without reading the fine print. The company was now under investigation for possible financial misconduct. Ron tried to throw Travis under the bus. But Travis had emails. Lots of them. Including ones where Ron said things like, "Don't worry about the technical details, just push it through." Those emails got leaked. To the board. To the clients. Even to the local press. Greyrock's stock plummeted. They lost 2 major investors. And within 6 months, the company filed for bankruptcy. Ron lost his position, his pension, and his reputation. His house was foreclosed. Last I heard, he was living in a condo his sister owned out of state. Travis? He got sued by multiple contractors and is currently working in sales for some MLM scheme, selling water purifiers on Instagram. No joke, and me, I'm thriving. I'm respected. I recreated a better version of my software for TitanBuild, and now they license it to other firms. It's become an industry standard, but the sweetest part, every time I go into a bidding meeting and see a Greyrock client sitting at the table, I know exactly what they're thinking, and I smile, shake their hand, and say, "Let's talk about doing this the right way this time." You'd think that would be the end of it. Company crashes, bad guys lose, hero moves on. But I wasn't quite done. See, even though I'd walked away with my head held high and a great job at TitanBuild, I kept hearing from former colleagues, clients, and even inspectors about how deeply Greyrock's rot had spread, not just in that company, but throughout the entire network of contractors, engineers, and even permit office contacts they had greased over the years. Travis may have been the most visible clown in the circus, but he wasn't the only one juggling flaming torches blindfolded. Some of the project managers who'd backed Ron during the restructuring were now trying to quietly rebrand themselves, pretending they'd had nothing to do with the disaster. I started noticing them at industry mixers, job fairs, LinkedIn networking events, all of them desperately trying to rewrite their roles, sweeping their involvement under the rug. So, I decided to make sure no one forgot. Looking back now, I don't think it was revenge that drove me so much as the need to make it matter. I'd been discarded like I didn't exist, replaced by someone who couldn't even spell foundation load, and it could have just ended there, with me bitter and silent, but instead, I made sure it echoed loud enough that anyone in our world who ever Googles Travis Greyrock will find nothing but smoke, ash, and a lesson in what happens when arrogance outruns ability. And if you ask me whether I'd do it again? In a heartbeat.